So welcome everyone. It's a great turnout tonight, so I appreciate you being here with us. Couple rules for the evening. We are going to keep you muted, and if you can leave your video on or off is up to you. If you do have questions, if you could put them over into the chat box, that would be great. We're going to be monitoring that throughout the conversation and answering in real time, sometimes in the chat. Sometimes one of us as presenters will talk through the questions as we see them. Towards the end of the session, we will turn off the mute factor, and if you want to actually ask a live question, we'll have some time to do that at the end of the session as well. So I think we're going to get started. I'm Becky Callis. I'm the executive director, and I'm joined tonight by a couple other presenters. So you may be able to see them on your screen at this point, depending on how you have yourself configured. Lisa Stuhlmaker is with us today. She's our finance director. Sue Lasco is with us. She's our operations director. Anne-Marie Gorman-Doyle is with us, and she's our development director. And Carlos Agreda is with us, and he is our music director. So we have a bunch of directors here to tell you about the season, which, as you might guess, is a little bit different than past seasons. So we are going to take you through kind of all the ins and outs of how we're going to operate with COVID. But before we get too much into the weeds, we are actually going to start with a presentation of the space where your students are going to be rehearsing. So you've probably read by now that we are going to be housed at Proctor's. And Justin Cook, who I haven't introduced, he's our marketing and publications manager. He's behind the scenes. He's sharing his screen right now, and he's going to take us on a little trip. I'm going to talk us through this. We're going on a 360 tour of the space that your kids are going to be going to. So what you're seeing right now is Stratton Plaza. It's behind Proctor's. There's an alley that you can actually drive through. Some of you who have been to Proctor's for Melodies or perhaps a school event have seen this. So this is where you're going to be dropping your students off. You can see here with this 360 version. Later, you're going to get a link to this actually, so you can do this in the comfort of your own home. You can play around with our 360 images. So that's where you're going to be dropping your student off. And then we're going to be going in through the back entrance here into Proctor's. Something to keep in mind is that Proctor's is not open to the public at this time, so the doors will be locked except for when ESYO is there. So we will have the doors unlocked during program time. This hallway seems like it's really long. It's really not. It's the miracle of technology here. So we're coming through the hallway. There will be a monitor in the hallway, and of course, as your students get dropped off, we're going to be asking if they did a health check in the morning or at least a couple hours before you drop them off, making sure that they've had their temperature checked at home. And then they'll be allowed to come into their rehearsal space. So the first rehearsal space that we're going to see is over here on our right, and we're going to go into a space called Key Hall. So there's sort of a big lobby area here, which is where some of the larger instruments like a tuba or the bass instruments like that will be. And now we're going to turn the corner and we're going to go into our first large rehearsal space. So at Proctor's, all of the rehearsal spaces that we are using are roughly 4,000 square feet in space, allowing for lots of physical distancing. The other great thing about this space is that they are all outfitted with MERV 13 filtration, which is the best highest level of HEPA filters, which means the air in this space, as you can see, it's really large. The air in this space is being constantly cleaned and filtered during rehearsal. What you see right now is the chairs that are set up for Symphony Classical, which includes our winds and a few of our brass instruments. You can see the front rows are a little bit closer because those are string players. They're 6 feet apart. Then behind them, you can see there's quite a bit of distance between the string chairs and the wind players in the back. They have 12 feet of distance between a player in the back and the string players. Harp players will be on one of the ends of the string players. So now we're going to go back out, and now we're in GE Theater, which is our second really large rehearsal space. Very similar format and setup. So you can see again, these chairs are now set up for Symphony Romantic, which includes our low brass. That weird light in the front is actually where our conductor will be, because our conductors are brilliant. And so you can see again, the distance chairs and so forth. When students enter into this space, they're going to be directed to a particular chair. The chairs will be numbered, and students will have their chair for their personal belongings and their personal equipment and so forth. Everybody needs to bring, obviously, their own instrument, their stand, their pencil, all of the rest of it. Unlike in past years, this year there will not be stand partners. So in past years, and we can switch back to the main area, that's fine. In past years, especially our string players would get used to kind of relying on their partner. Sometimes they would show up without a stand, and that was okay because their stand partner was there. This year, as you can see from the way we're configuring this, there aren't any stand partners. So everybody really needs to be responsible for their own things. Okay, so I'm just seeing some questions about the space. The alley is only one way, and we're going to be entering from the Clinton Street side. That's the way the buses tend to go, and then exiting on the Broadway side. It allows for kind of a narrow entrance, but then it widens out as you head towards Broadway, which will allow people, if they forgot their health form for some crazy reason, or their health check, we'll be able to pull them over without blocking people going through the alleyway. Those of you familiar with the parking there is a big lot off of Clinton Street that is right in that alley area, and that is free parking for us during program time. So you'll be able to pull into the parking area if you prefer, and then walk over to the alley instead of coming through the alley itself. Narrow hallways, I think that's actually just because of the way it was filmed. These hallways, I don't know if you've been to Proctor's, but the arcade is very, very broad. So if you've ever been to a show there, when they let people out of the show, it does get crowded, but that's when there's literally 1,000 people going through that arcade and exiting. For us, when we're walking through, as we were there today, for example, you could easily have 8 people across in that arcade without touching one another. So it's actually pretty large. So we're not too concerned about it. We will definitely be dismissing differently than usual though, so that may address some of the issues about players going through the hallway. Unlike in past years where the conductor would finish and kids would kind of just get up as they wished and go to their stand, or go to their cases and pack up and leave. This year, they'll be dismissed by 2s and 3s and 4s as we monitor how many kids are leaving at any one time. For the groups that have the large instruments, the kids who have their cases out in the area just outside of the rehearsal space, those will be marked off as well, and those students will leave first so that they can start packing up their tuba or their bass and their cellos, and then other kids will be at their seats packing up their materials, and then we'll be dismissing in 4s and so forth so that they can exit and remain socially distanced. It's going to be tricky because a lot of this depends on, how we're enforcing it, but also the message that they're getting at home and that they're getting at school. So we are going to be very adamant that kids stay distanced. So when they come into rehearsal, they will need to remain physically distanced from one another. As you can see from the chairs, you can definitely wave to each other, you can talk to each other, but there will not be any big reunions at ESYO this year, unfortunately. So we're going to be there to make music and enjoy making music, and then we're going to exit. There will not be a lot of time for anything other than music making, which leads me to one other little detail, which is bathrooms. We are going to encourage you as much as possible to use facilities at home before you come to Proctor's. We do have access to bathrooms, of course, but we would like to limit the use of bathrooms during rehearsal. Most of our rehearsals are fairly short in length, which means that students should be able to come to an hour-and-a-half rehearsal, hopefully not having to use the bathroom in the middle of that rehearsal. So if people could plan ahead of time, that would be great. We do not have regular breaks scheduled during these rehearsals to avoid times where kids have nothing to do other than to mill around. And so there's not a logical time for a student to feel like they suddenly have to go and congregate in a bathroom. Let's see, we also, of course, will have hand sanitizer and cleaning materials throughout. We'll have some extra masks on hand. We've been very careful about our planning for personal protection. So all students are going to be masked, all adults, every person essentially in proctors at any time is masked. So when students come in, they will be masked. Our wind and brass students will be masked until rehearsal begins. They will be able to take their mask down in order to play. And the reason for this is that we have contracted with a local craftsperson who has actually made personal protection equipment for the instrument. So our winds are going to be bagged. Clarinets have their bags, oboes bags, bassoons even have a bag. All of this has been tested and sized so that students can have their hands inside the bag to play. Our brass will have coverings over the bells so that this can help restrict the flow of the air and limit the aerosol spread through the air during rehearsal. A reminder, of course, we do have MERV 13 filtration, which does help as well in terms of the circulation of the air. Okay, don't see any other questions over there. In terms of if you are a wind or brass parent, we are going to have the actual date for pickup of your personal protection equipment for your instrument. That will be coming to you directly from your manager. So you'll get an email saying, your personal protection equipment is ready and you can pick it up at proctors, or you can simply wait and get it at your first rehearsal. But if you want to be able to get it early so that your student can try it out and make sure that they're comfortable with it, I think our first rehearsal will be a bit of an adjustment if kids haven't had a chance to really practice with it. Okay, so that's pretty much all of our cleaning stuff. Obviously, the building is going to be thoroughly disinfected and cleaned and sanitized every day. During the week, Monday through Thursday, we don't overlap with rehearsals. So there is only one rehearsal in any of those spaces each of those evenings. On Sundays, there are rehearsals that occur in succession, and we've left plenty of time in between in order to actually go and do a thorough cleaning of the space before another group was to come in. So that is how we're handling the cleaning. Last thing before I turn it over to Carlos to tell us a little bit more about how we've actually designed this program this year, is that we do have a special announcement that I think went out this morning or yesterday morning, perhaps, into your inboxes about a live stream option. We realized as we were doing all of our plans this summer, we were so committed and focused on providing a really safe and enriching in-person experience. But at the same time, we realized, you know, we have a few kids, for instance, who are stuck overseas. They were not able to get back to the country. And then we have a few other families who have pretty severe compromised health situations in the home. And we started to think there could be some of you who've already signed up who may end up being contact traced and have to do a mandatory quarantine during our season. And so we started to explore live stream options. It's not easy, frankly, to set up a really good live stream for an orchestra because we want students at home to be able to see their peers and the conductor and to be able to hear what's happening in that space. But we tested it out today to be sure, and it works really, really well. So we are going to be able to offer a live stream backup. If, for instance, your student is not able to attend because of a COVID-related situation, they will be able to log in through Google Classroom, and they'll be able to participate in the rehearsal to an extent, meaning they can't unmute themselves. So they won't be able to be heard by the conductor, but they will be able to play along with what's happening in that rehearsal. They will also be able to do what people are doing off to the side. They can ask a question, they can respond to something. It's really meant sort of as a backup for if you can't come to rehearsal. Obviously, the big caveat to this is that there's really nothing to live stream if the majority of people aren't showing up to rehearsal. So if a lot of people say, oh, that's great, I can live stream from home, if the students aren't there, and Carlos is shaking his head, if nobody's there working with Carlos or any of our other conductors, then there's nothing to live stream. So this is really a backup for students. It's also a really exciting option for parents, because this year, again, unlike in past years, we are not able to have all of our parents come into the building. And we do have a lot of parents who have been accustomed to be able to come in, observe rehearsal, or sit outside the door and listen to what's happening. Because of the live stream option, you can actually log in through your student's Google account for their Google Classroom, and you can click live stream and you can actually enjoy the rehearsal from home, or you can go and sit in your car. You can go to whatever coffee shop might be open, I'm not sure. We're gonna compile a list of those in the vicinity of Proctor's for you so that you can do that. But it will let you follow along with what's happening. And Justin may surprise us occasionally with some 360 film footage of your rehearsals so that you can actually click and look around and see your student in real time playing and kind of check out if their fingering is good and if they're paying attention and so forth, kind of like a nanny cam. So we'll have that set up for you guys as well. Okay, so right now I am going to pass this off to Carlos, who's going to give us a little bit more information about artistically how this is all going to work and what the configurations of our ensembles looks like this year.
Yes, hello, thank you, Becky. And hello, everybody. It's very nice to see many of your names here and faces that I have already met. Many of you I haven't had the pleasure to meet. It's great to see so many people here, so hello. So yes, it is a very, very strange season, but I have to say very, very exciting because, okay, so we wanted to react to be able to be safe and to play music in person, make music in person. So we had to reduce the size of the ensemble. So the big orchestras, for example, the Symphony Orchestra that is 96 members, we had to split that orchestra in smaller chamber orchestras in order to fit and to follow the regulations in terms of occupancy in a building and make sure that the social distancing is possible. But then we ended up with smaller orchestras, which is a very exciting thing. And the reason why it is exciting is because this is allowing us open the door for repertoire opportunities that would not be possible. Repertoire that is very rare to have the chance to explore, repertoire that is essential for the education of orchestra musicians, and also the educational opportunities that these represent. What I mean is the personalized instruction. So, for example, in the normal symphony orchestra, we would have normally 16 first violins. Now we have 4, and they will be each one in one, like separated and isolated in their own stand, which will allow for a lot of personalized attention and a lot of for educational purposes, much more meaningful experience. The other thing is that since we are splitting the orchestra, but we still have the same amount of conductors, so I cannot split myself in 3. So what we had to play with the schedule in a way that we are bringing coaches that will be working with the students with more frequency than before. So if I am rehearsing with half of my orchestra and the other half is rehearsing at the same time, they will be working with a coach. And the following week, I will be working with the orchestra that was worked with a coach, and the other orchestra will be now worked with a coach. And I'm saying orchestra, but actually each of those sub-orchestras will be divided into smaller sectionals, also to optimize the social distancing and the occupancy. So in other words, what we're doing is having a lot of personalized attention with not only with the conductor, but also with coaches that will be meet with in a very regular the basis. We decided to divide the season in 3 concert cycles for all the ensembles. These concert cycles are about 8 or 9 rehearsals and 1 concert. And you will say, oh, what do you mean by a concert? And a concert is actually a live stream concert. We will have the musicians on stage in Proctor's main stage that we all know very well. It's even larger than the spaces that we'll be rehearsing. And we will be performed as if it was a normal concert. The difference is that the audience will be from home. It will be a virtual audience. We're not going to have actual bodies in the audience watching. We will have a professional production team recording the audio, recording the video in the most professional way possible, and live stream it live to our virtual audience that will have access to these concerts in the same way that a normal concert you would go and buy a ticket through Access ESYO, and then you will have the access for this unique performance. These concerts will be uniquely streamed. It's not that we are going to save a recording to stream later. It will be exclusively for the people that are watching, as if you were going to a live performance. So it is going to be a very, very exciting season for that matter, also the repertoire that we're doing. Every ensemble will have the same kind of treatment. And the last thing that I wanted to mention, which is very exciting, is the online offerings that we're actually able to put together for you. As we have discussed, the length of rehearsals have shortened. We're not going to have 3-hour rehearsals for symphony orchestra. We're going to have shorter rehearsals, which means that in order to kind of compensate as well, we wanted to have offerings and opportunities for the musicians to do something online and learn about the music that they're playing and learn about other aspects of music. We have been receiving a lot of requests from alumni even and current students about being able to learn music theory, being able to learn music history or audition workshops on all of these enrichment subjects that are we never have time in rehearsal to talk about it, to treat. And now we will be able to offer these online experiences, which will be also something that will compensate and enrich the ESYO experience. So we are very exciting. I am personally thinking that, yes, when we come back to the normal season, maybe next season, when everything is normal, we will be able to keep many of these things. For example, the almost every weekly coaching, having smaller ensembles with personalized attention that is allowing for very appropriate repertoire for the level. It's something that we were not able to do before, and now we are able to do. And we'll see if we will actually stay with some of these things in the future. But we're just very, very excited. I don't know if you have any other questions, please let us know. I will give the microphone back to Becky.
Carlos, can you just answer a couple questions about how many horns do you have in each of your orchestras?
Okay, yes, how many, I haven't seen the chat. Answering that question, how many horns? We have 2 horns per orchestra, especially for the symphony and rep orchestra, we have an average of 2, like in general 2 horns per the classical orchestra. So we're dividing the horns into 2, for example, the symphony orchestra. This is complicated. So symphony orchestra will be, the horns will be divided between classical orchestra and romantic orchestra, and each of those have 2 horns. Same thing happens to rep orchestra. They have the classical orchestra and the romantic orchestra. Each of them have 2 horns. Sue, I think one of them has only 1 horn for now.
They will be, actually the horns will be covering both orchestras. They're going to kind of share their parts. They're going to be busy.
Yes, yes. So yeah, no more than 2 horns in the orchestra.
The other question about concerts, just to clarify how that's going to work. So they will be on the main stage at Proctor's for our studio recordings. The main stage is currently set as a safe studio recording space by Proctor's, and it's working with Open Stage Media that does the recording there. So students are actually going to take the stage as their small ensemble, distanced, all the rest of it. They will be recording their full concert as one recording, just as though it were an actual live concert. But that recording will then be streamed out at a different time entirely. So those of you who drive your student to the recording session won't have to worry that the recording session is happening and they've got to find somewhere to watch it. We want the students to be able to see it as well. So it'll be streamed out to everyone and you can sit together as a family and watch. The other thing we're adding this year is that the concerts are going to be recorded in full length and they will be offered only once. You'll buy the access to it, you'll see the concert, and then it will go away, largely because of copyright issues with the music. However, we are going to take about a 5 to 10 minute segment from each of our ensembles that perform in that first concert cycle, and we're going to create an hour-long best of that concert cycle, which is going to go out to the world, and it will be something that will live forever. So it will be something that our conductors will curate and pick the 5 to 10 minute segment that they really want to be showcased as part of that best of. And that video will be available for everybody to share and to see many times over. But the live recording or studio recording of the full concert is a one-time deal. And that's because when we pay for the music from the, from the distributors of the music, we can only pay for that concert. So we have to pay for the performance itself.
Yeah,
so that sounds, yeah. So thanks, Carlos. And we'll be paying attention. Yep, Concerto Competition, I believe. Yeah,
yes.
Can you talk a little bit about last year's Concerto Winners, how we're going to handle that? And
yes, that is a very, very good question. One thing that about the horns that I just got to read the question about the assistant. We will not have assistant because we only have 2 parts per and we only have two musicians, so 1 musician per part. The luxury of an assistant is something that we won't have this time, which will mean a lot for the students as well. And regarding the concerto competition, last year winners, as you know, we had to postpone the concerts, and we're trying to find a way that we can perform. One of the concerto competition winner, for example, of last year, William Lorisella, he happened to be playing a piece, the Shostakovich Piano Concerto, which is written for chamber orchestra. So lucky enough, I don't know if he was predicting this pandemic, but we will be able to, with the size of the smallest of our orchestra, we'll be able to play that. We are still in conversations, but we're thinking about maybe being able to have that included into this season virtual concert. And for the concerto competition, we're also having discussions for this year about the possibilities. We want to keep it. However, as you know, there will be restrictions. We will have restrictions in terms of orchestration. So the musicians that want to apply for the concerto competition need to be very careful about choosing their concerto, because if they choose a concerto that is written for a big orchestra, sadly, we are not going to be able to accommodate because of this type of the orchestra. So all of those details about concerto competition, also the date, we're working on see what would be a good date for that, if that happens. All of those details will be sent in a very appropriate time.
Thanks. Sue, can you answer the question that we got from Katie Jones about when they receive their music? She says she's new to ESYO.
If she could type into the chat so you can see what group she's in, that will help me answer the question.
Okay. So Katie, if you could, I'm assuming you're Katie Jones. If not, whoever is coming, whoever logged in as Katie Jones, if you could let us know what group, rep group.
It's in the mail. If it's repertory orchestra, it's in the mail.
Okay.
In fact,
great.
I know students have received it already, went out yesterday.
Excellent. Okay, so keep going with your questions off to the side. We'll keep monitoring those, but right now I'm going to turn it over to Anne-Marie. She's going to tell us a little bit more about how you can be engaged as a parent this year, even though you're doing so at a distance. So Anne-Marie, take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'm very glad you're here. I will address Tara Phil's question first, which was, will there be parent liaisons? You know, it is not incorrect to say that we will miss seeing the parents as much as anything. And we really feel that we have great relationships with our parents and the parent volunteers and the parent liaisons. Just at this time, we're not in a situation where we can have parent volunteers in the rehearsals for all the reasons that Becky has discussed. As restrictions lighten up, if it happens in the spring, we would hope to go back and be able to have more parent volunteers. And again, I just want to say that we feel as bad about that as anybody. I just wanted to reiterate a few things that have already been said, but are part of the parent thing. So this year, you don't have the opportunity to sit into your child's rehearsal, but as Becky said, we just have a phenomenal live stream option that's come together. You will have to log into your child's Google Classroom with your child's email to get into that live stream. So just remember that. You will not have your own login. You will use your child's email to get into your child's Google Classroom. And that is just going to be a wonderful thing, I think, to see what's happening in rehearsal. Second thing is Play-A-Thon. Play-A-Thon for people who are new, like Katie Jones. Play-A-Thon is our largest fundraiser of the year. It's an incredibly exciting day when all of the ensembles come together, historically at Crossgates Mall. We play all day. Every ensemble plays from 10 in the morning to 6 at night. And this past year, we raised $65,000 in that day. It is highly unlikely that Play-A-Thon is going to happen that way this year, but Play-A-Thon is going to happen. So as those forms solidify, we will certainly be in touch. We have lots and lots of parent involvement historically on that day, and we're hopeful that that's going to be able to happen again this spring. So stay tuned for Play-A-Thon. Third thing quickly is, again, Carlos and Becky already addressed it. Concerts are unlike they have been in the past, but you will be able to sit in your living room with snacks and drinks and enjoy an absolutely phenomenal performance that has been recorded on Proctor's main stage. So it's not all bad. There's a lot of good that's going to come out of this. One way that you can stay very involved and that we really need is for you to keep us updated on your child's health and the health of your family. We need to know if you've been contact traced. Well, we need you to stay home and your child to stay home. If you've been contracts traced, we need to know if you've been in touch. We need to know if there are symptoms. We need you to stay home if you are at all concerned that someone in your family has been compromised, because obviously, if your child is infected or has been exposed, that puts everyone else at risk. So to make this whole year work, we have to have students involved for the live stream to work. We also have to have people be very clear about symptoms and filling out health forms and that kind of thing. The last thing is that I want to say is we know that people have a lot of great ideas and great suggestions, and you are absolutely more than welcome to send them to any of us or to me in particular at amgormandoyle@SEO.org. We'd love to hear from you. So that's it for me, unless anyone has any questions.
Excellent. And I would just add to that, based on what Anne-Marie said, and I think I see it in the chat from Justin as well, we have super detailed instructions in your member handbook regarding COVID, and particularly regarding what to do if you have been in contact with somebody who's infected, or if some sort of, if your household is compromised in some way. So be sure, absolutely sure, to read your membership handbook. It isn't the same as last year, so if you're used to just sort of taking a quick glance at it, take longer than a quick glance at it this year. Melodies, and then I'll try to get a lot of these things, but Melodies is still in discussion at this point. CBS 6, which is the producer of Melodies, is very eager to make this production happen this year. And the producer from CBS 6 has already been meeting with us and with Carlos in particular to discuss ideas and how it could happen. Obviously, it's not going to happen for a live audience. So the thought is to make it truly a TV televised type production. And so there's lots of really cool ways to do that. I know the question involved the chorus. Also highly unlikely that we would have a full chorale of any sort. The involvement of singers would likely be small individual singers or a small type of madrigal done in the safe studio environment, distanced, and likely not at the same time as the symphony. So there would probably be some video editing and magic happening in order to bring all that together. That also goes to Tiffany's question about international students. We are able to incorporate international students into our best of concert videos, not the ones that we record in full length, but for the best of the 10-minute segment or so from your group, you will be able to submit a video, and then we can stitch that together in similar fashion to what we did in the past spring with our video extravaganzas that we had. Looking off to the side to see some more questions here. ESYO t-shirts also underway. You will be seeing some information about that towards the end of September. I know it's a little later than usual. We've had a lot on our plate, and I think in an effort to get the wind and brass outfitted properly, that took the place of our ability to order t-shirts, but they will be coming soon. Concerts live stream.
Oh, I think it's a similar question.
Similar question, yeah. So the concerts, so for instance, we might be recording the concert on a Thursday, but the concert might not broadcast, for instance, until Saturday. So the actual time that the concert will drop, quote unquote, online will not be the same time as the studio recording. So you don't have to worry about where you are.
Screening question.
Contactless pickup. So oh yeah, we didn't really talk about the questionnaire. So the questionnaire will be available. We're going to have it up and running by Monday so that our Tuesday rehearsal will be able to have it well in advance. You'll all get a notification about how to access the online screening questionnaire. It will be something that you can access easily online, similar to doing like a Survey Monkey. It'll be fairly simple and short. And you will be doing it obviously in advance of coming to the rehearsal. If you arrive and you haven't done the questionnaire, we will simply pull you off to the side before you enter the building, make sure that it gets filled out. We will have some thermometers on hand to do temperature checks for those of you who did not do it before you arrived. We do need a parent to sign off on the fact that, yes, they did a temperature check. Again, temperature checks are helpful to a certain extent, but we know with asymptomatic spread that you don't always have a temperature and you might be infected. And so we really want our parents to be as vigilant as possible in observing any of the changes in your child before you bring them to our rehearsal. But we will do a temperature check just to be safe with students who arrive and have not completed the health questionnaire. We are going to be keeping records of the health questionnaire, so it all goes into our database, and if there's any situation where we're contacted because your student might be at a school or in a classroom that had a case, then we can go back through all of our records and present any information about our health forms. Yeah.
I just wanted to say one other thing about the health forms. So we will have the thermometers there if someone hasn't been able to do it. But really, 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 it's in everyone's best interest to have this done before your child arrives at rehearsal. Because if you have to pull off to the side and we have to go through that questionnaire with 25 kids and check temperatures, it delays everyone. It makes the child late for rehearsal. It's just not a good thing. It's a quick 3 or 4 or 5 question thing, and we just really ask you to please get it done before the child arrives.
Okay, so that I'm seeing most of the questions off to the side. I believe we have answered. However, at this time, Justin, if you could just make sure that people have the ability to unmute themselves. If anybody has questions that they would like to ask audibly, if you want to unmute or turn on your video, that's what I'm trying to say, please feel free to do so, or you can type something off to the side and we can answer those questions for you at this time. I would say that my advice is, if you haven't read the membership handbook, to do so. There's lots of great information there. We will be keeping everything up to date. The other thing I will say is that we all know at this point that our plans are as perfect as they can be in this moment. So if things change, then our plans will have to change. And so we will be as careful as we can be in terms of letting you know or updating you as things change. But I think as we've all lived through these past 4 or 5 or 6 months, it seems both endless and very short all at the same time. One thing we've all learned is that it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen a week from now or a month from now. One thing we can assure you is that we are going to pay close attention to anything that does change in terms of our local health situation, our state health situation. We will follow the dictates of our local health officials and our state health officials, and be sure that we are following the guidelines. At this point, we're really confident about our safety plans. They've been looked over by our members of our board, by lawyers, the SUNY administrators that we work with in partnership at SUNY Schenectady have seen it, and they've been impressed with the thorough details. So we feel very good about what we've put there. It doesn't mean that things won't change, however. So if that happens, we'll let you know for sure.
I just wanted to add one other thing. This is a little bit separate from what you're saying, Becky, but I was thinking about the thing of everyone having to have their own music stand, and what I wanted to say is I'm a parent of a youth jazz child, and I have a symphony orchestra alumni student. So the violin player, the alumni, my daughter, always had a stand partner. And my daughter was the one who always depended on her stand partner for her stand. I don't think she brought one in 7 years. So and she just forgot. So my little parenting tip advice is to have almost an ESYO kit in your car with a stand, maybe some hand sanitizer, a mask, a pencil to write notes on the music, just everything you might need in a bag, so that it's all ready to go, and the child is not faced with having to come into rehearsal and have their music on the chair in front of them, which is going to be really awkward. So that's my little parenting tip.
I answered the question, I think, off to the side about wind orchestra. Wind orchestra, unlike in past years where they all met as a full group, and then we had wind choir and brass choir that met on alternate weeks. This year, wind choir will be for the first session and brass choir for the second session, back to back in the day. They are in different rooms. So while the time seems like one ends when the other one starts, they're not in the same rehearsal space. So one's in Key Hall and one's in GE, and Dr. Hinsborough, who will be conducting both of those groups, will be the individual who moves from one room to the other. And the students, once they finish with the first session with him, will be leaving the building when the second session is starting. Okay. Any other questions from you guys tonight? I think one thing to keep in mind, I know things may pop up in your head after the fact, and if you can see us on the screen, the people that you should reach out to if you have questions about tuition, or if you're concerned about how you're setting up your payment plans, you should be reaching out to Lisa Stuhlmaker. If you have questions about music, schedule, when you're supposed to drop your student off, how that's all going to work, then you should reach out to Sue Lasko. If you have questions about how you can engage in fundraising, or if you'd like to make a donation, you can reach out to me or Most definitely, Anne Marie. One thing I just wanted to say is that obviously we super appreciate everybody being willing to take a leap of faith with us and make sure that this is going to work. But this is not a cheap endeavor. This year, more than ever, we have invested a huge amount of resources into making this happen. The most expensive of which, frankly, is the rehearsal space. So Proctor's is shut to the public. They opened the building essentially for our program, which means that all of the cost of heating the building, having the lights on, the MERV 13 filters and so forth is not an inexpensive endeavor for Proctor's. And so we are helping with that cost, which is significantly more than we normally would spend on a venue. And so this year, when Anne Marie says, hey, we've got to engage in a fundraiser, it's serious. This year. So we will be looking for ways to raise those funds. Anne Marie and I will be writing lots of grants this year for support. But that is something that we should all keep in mind as we're going through this very crazy year. All right, I'm looking off to the side. I don't see, mailings. I think we're using Mailhouse. I like the Jailhouse though, that's cute.
May I just add that every registered member and parents should have received a communication from their manager. So if you're still not sure like what group your child is in or when the rehearsal starts, you should have that in an email. If you
Do you know all that?
Pardon me?
When we go?
Yes, we emailed all that between last Friday and Tuesday of this week. Every group received a mailing from their manager. So if you did not receive something or check back in your email, maybe it went to spam, maybe there's a problem, you can easily, even if just an easy email to info@esyo.org. I'll see that and then I'll be sure you get connected with your manager because you should have received that by now.
Great. Any other questions that we can address at this time?
Hi, Becky. This is Justin, actually, on the other in the back behind the scenes. We did have a question about notifications for parents to kind of set reminders for themselves to do the health questionnaire. I'd like to share my screen for a moment. Because we use Google Calendars, this is actually something easy for you to do at home. So bear with me for just a moment, and I'll walk everyone through.
Super.
So if you go to SEO.org/members, you're going to see the area where it says rehearsal schedule. So go ahead and click on that rehearsal schedule button, and then you'll see everything organized by ensemble. So if you're looking for the string orchestra rehearsal schedule, it's here. And this is going to update whenever we make a change. We make the change here, this will automatically update. So what you're going to see now is the plus sign in Google Calendar. If you click that button, it's going to transfer you to your Google Calendar, and you can actually add your ensemble calendar to your smartphone Google Calendar, and you can actually adjust and set notifications. So if you need a notification the day before to do the health questionnaire, you can go ahead and set that for yourself.
Thank you.
Nice. Thank you. Rita, I see your note there. You will typically be getting a weekly update from your manager. And so I'm sure managers will be doing the reminder. Usually the weekly update comes out a day or two before the rehearsal. And that will likely have the reminder, please make sure you fill out your health questionnaire before you come to rehearsal. Awesome. Any other questions that we can help you with at this time? Justin, after this meeting, will be sending to everyone a link to play around with our virtual space so that you can look and see what those rooms look like. Keeping in mind, of course, that we took the film footage when there was still that strange light in the room and so forth. They won't look quite like that when your students show up, but it'll at least give you a sense of the distancing with the chairs and all of the rest of it. Okay, does anyone have anything else to add from the panel? Okay, well, we thank everyone for showing up this evening, and we will certainly have more of these forums as we head into this very different year to keep you all in the loop and give you an opportunity to share and to talk about some of the questions that you have. So expect perhaps in the next few weeks as we get going with the season, we'll have another one of these so that you guys can ask any questions that may have arisen at that point. I like the theater ghost light. We'll put that in there. Thank you. All right, so we are going to adjourn this meeting and we'll see all of you at rehearsals in the next couple weeks. Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.